I'm glad that we got this chance to talk because we have clients that have a lot of things in common.
Yes.
So how the gut and our gut health and feelings impact our mental health and our gut.
Yes. Gut and
One thing
anxiety, like
in
all the time.
The one thing that we know is, and I think this is fascinating when we have clients come in, 95% of your serotonin receptors are actually in the gut, not in our brain. Only 5% are in our brain. So, and sometimes it's a great way of thinking like the barometer of how your anxiety is or your mental well-being can actually be in your gut. So that nervous tummy or that tightening you feel in your gut is a great barometer of how your anxiety is. One
Yeah.
example I get with my kids is the beginning of the school year. I'm hearing a lot of my stomach hurts. Do you feel nervous? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Are you hungry? No, 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 no nerves. But your stomach tells you the truth. It's a scale of telling what's going on. You might not cognitively know that something's bothering you, but that gut doesn't lie.
Right. Because they're in constant communication, right? The mind and the body constantly talking. And so sometimes the gut is a place where sometimes it can show up there before the mind fully realizes
Right.
what's going on. Yeah. 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 That's a lot of sensory points in the gut. Holy cow. I didn't realize there were that many of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because like with anxiety, if we think about, and I mean, like the common language for it is that like fight or flight response. When our brain perceives something as like dangerous or threatening, it triggers this fight or flight survival response. And there are fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There are other reactions too, but fight or flight is kind of the go to here. But it triggers this response, which sends messages to your different parts of your body to really get it into survival mode. The idea is kind of like if you're hiking and you see a bear, your brain sees the bear and then sends messages to the rest of your body saying, we either need to run away from this bear or we got to get ready to fight the bear, but we got to do something.
Uh-huh.
And so what happens is it sends those chemicals, it sends those messages, and our heart rate increases, our breathing changes, and we start to breathe. Instead of breathing with the bottoms of our lungs, we start to breathe up here because we're getting ready to like kind of like go, right?
Uh-huh.
But that fight flight response also like stops digestion because when it comes to the body and gearing up for action, the brain tells the body like, hey, digestion, we don't need to be worrying about that right now. We've got more important things that we need you to be focusing on. So we are directing all of that energy to our respiratory system and what our
Mm-hmm.
heart needs and what our core muscles need to like go.
We are in survival mode. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And so, like, it can really have an impact then on the gut. And what I find for a lot of the women that I work with is that anxiety is a feeling that like shows up in the gut,
Oh,
like
totally. Yeah.
very much. And it shows up in other ways too, right? We worry, we have a lot of like worry thoughts about things. We might kind of get restless in our body. We might get like hot and sweaty. We might feel this like energy that we got to do, a sense of urgency. But also we get that gut feeling and it just really sometimes it shows up as like a nausea. Sometimes we might find that we have to like go to the bathroom or stay near a bathroom. We might find that something maybe doesn't feel like it's quite sitting right with us. Maybe we just ate. We might feel like our stomach is in knots and there's like a lot of tension in our gut. We might feel that feeling of butterflies, especially if it's a little bit more of like a positive anxiety, kind of like an anticipation, like an excitement
Excitement. Uh-huh.
anticipation. It can feel more like the butterflies rather than a kind of
Tension.
feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah. but it
Have
definitely
you
shows up.
noticed with your clients too that a lot of them think, oh, that's just how my gut is and that's normal? Because you just become so used to it that women
Yeah,
think that's just how it is. I have diarrhea every other day and that's normal, or I'm always constipated,
yeah,
when there's a different way that we can function,
yes.
right?
Yes. Or like, oh, my mom had a nervous stomach when I was growing up. It just runs in my family. This is just
Uh-huh.
how it is. And rather than kind of knowing or learning that there's changes that we can make to regulate that in a different way, it's just kind of like,
Uh-huh.
oh, this is just kind of how it is. And the possibility of change isn't even a thought there.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. 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 So I'm thinking about like, how we did like different things that we can do to kind of like regulate that. Like as we're talking about like this possibility of creating change, like what does that look like on the
So when I get clients that have that nervous stomach, so if you experience that and you've got a lot of nausea, how do you even eat? So we know eating regularly needs to take place. So, but if you're feeling nausea, how are you supposed to get food in your stomach? Or if you have that tightening, how do you get food? Because what we don't want is to not eat and go for long periods of time not eating. That makes the anxiety feel worse, right? So one of the strategies I use is when you have that real tightness, is doing things that are more liquids or yogurts or smoothies. Those are so much easier to get down and eat. The thought sometimes of chewing food or having real meals feels a
yeah,
little bit overwhelming. So that's kind of the first practical strategy. The other one is really focusing on your general gut health. And that's kind of more of a long-term strategy. So what are we doing to nurture our gut health in terms of nutrients? And there's things that we want to look at in terms of our behavioral, the mental health aspect, but in terms of what we're putting into our bodies, are we getting enough fiber? Most of us need about 25 to 35 grams of fiber, and we think we're doing okay. But when we look at our nutrient intake, we really need a lot more. Are we getting enough water? And I'm not big on measuring the water, and we can talk more about how we do that. But honestly, doing a pee test, what color does your urine look like? Um,
what color should it look
getting
like?
It should look like a light straw color. So that's a real quick little science project you can do in the bathroom at home. Like if you're just noticing that it's looking darker, then just drink more water. You don't need to measure and
Yeah.
monitor. Just keep drinking water. And then if there's things that we can add in to kind of just make sure that if you're not having soft form stools, then do I need to add in prunes? Do I need to add in benefiber? What can I do to kind of keep my gut happy? So these are real practical things we can do to kind of keep regularity.
Yeah.
But once you have that tightening, what sounds appealing to just kind of keep the energy in?
Yeah. Oh man, smoothies, yogurt, like that stuff does sound like it would be just not only like helpful in that moment to get a little bit of that nourishment, but it also sounds like some comfort food in
Yeah.
some ways too.
Yeah.
Right? We're not talking about like eating like just a plate full of vegetables, steamed vegetables. We're talking about
Right.
like, yogurt, smoothies, there's some sweetness there. There's
Just in that moment, right? And some
Mhm.
people need to get
Yeah.
all the way down to just having crackers if it's real, just to settle your stomach sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because man, like that tightness, that GI distress that can like come, whether it's and it's kind of interesting, right? Because it's a little bit like chicken or the egg. Does
Right. Yeah.
the anxiety cause the GI distress, or does GI distress cause anxiety? And even for the same woman, it can go either way, just depending on the day, depending on the week, depending on your hormone cycle and where you are. And like so many different things could be factoring into that it does become like chicken or egg, right?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes sometimes while anxiety can create GI distress, sometimes it can go the other way, where then like that upset stomach on the morning of a busy day, even though like we know like, ugh, we're already feeling overwhelmed with all we've got going on,
Mhm.
that upset stomach in and of itself then can cause more anxiety
Right.
because then we start to worry about, is there going to be a bathroom nearby?
Right. That anticipatory stress of
Yes.
GI.
Yeah.
Yes,
What if I
totally.
have to like excuse myself from this important
Uh,
meeting? What if I'm in the middle of presenting? Like, oh my gosh, my family's supposed to go on this hike. What if there's no bathrooms there? Oh no. And sometimes when this is not something that we're thinking about how we can create change with, we can then just end up like missing out on that stuff.
right.
We decline those invites to go on the scenic hikes. We might, like not go to new places where we've never been because we don't know where the bathrooms are, what that situation is. We just don't, instead of having to think about it, we just say no. And we end up like missing out on a lot of
Right.
stuff, which kind of sucks. We don't want to have to,
Yeah.
like, we don't want to give our gut that much power that it gets to decide what we
A
get to
safe
participate
route.
in.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Especially because there can be so much benefit to things like going for that hike in terms of like the exercise and all the vitamin D and the quality time with the people we're with. Like, we don't want to sacrifice that stuff because of anxiety about what if I have to go to the bathroom. So, you've got some cool tools in
I
terms
do.
of,
So one of the things you kind of touched on when we talk about that fight or flight is we really want to calm our body down. And I love to calm the body down before we eat because we really need to be in that state of rest and digest. You
yes.
can't eat when you're running from that bear. Your body just can't do it. You don't have blood supply going to that stressed gut. So how do we calm our body down before we eat? One of the
Mhm.
things that I think works super well with clients is just taking 2 breaths before you eat. So kind of grounding yourself and taking 2 really good breaths before you eat.
Mhm.
The other thing I like to do with clients is some clients are really sensory clients. And you know, if you're one of those people, if you tend to love tactile things, or you're someone that loves fidget stuff, so things like this, just having this kind of stuff around the house, or if you have this kind of stuff at your desk, even having this kind of stuff while you're working through the day, just kind of takes some of that edge off. But
Yes.
particularly before you eat, it can just be calming. So
Mhm.
I love to do that. So not just the food you eat, but kind of bringing you down into that rest and digest state. So you're
Yes.
mentally ready to calm the gut down.
Yeah.
So feet on the ground, you're kind of grounding yourself. You take a couple breaths and then you eat. It's
Mhm.
not a super big, like, oh, you need to start meditating 10 minutes a day, or you need to start this routine. It's something that you can just integrate into your current lifestyle of eating, right?
Yes. Yes. And there's so many different things that like, I mean, gosh, I even as we speak have a little hair tie that I just have like twirled around my finger. Like it doesn't even
Uh-huh.
have to, we don't have to go buy these fancy things. You can if you want to. There's
Uh-huh.
plenty of them available. But also like twirling a hair tie on your finger or kind of playing with a paper clip. It could just even be some of those little
Mhm.
things. And the breathing can be so powerful, right? Because we talked about how like when the fight or flight kicks on, we start to breathe with the top parts of our lungs up here, and the bottom parts just don't get used, all the bottom parts, right? And so we really want to try to bring some intention into like breathing with our full lung capacity. Because also when we do that, it's gonna then send signals back up to the brain that says like, hey, if we're breathing all the way down here, we must be okay. The bear must not be here anymore. Like
Uh-huh.
okay, we can kind of like whew, slow this down and get to that rest and digest.
Uh-huh.
The other interesting thing about breathing is that when we exhale, our heart rate slows down just a tiny little bit, a tiny little bit. And the goal of this is to slow the body down. And so you may have heard people talk about square breathing. It's cool. It's great. I like, take you back to high school geometry, trapezoid breathing, where we're going to follow the trapezoid shape and we're going to inhale as we go across the top. We're going to hold on the side and we're going to exhale across the bottom and then hold on the side. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to extend that exhale just a little bit and really maximize like the slowing down of things.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, and I will say I am not a musical person. I do not have an internal metronome. If I'm counting my breathing, I promise you, I'm counting faster at the beginning than I am at the end, even though I'm counting to the same numbers, which I think speaks to how breathing slows things down because I start counting slower. But when I do this breathing exercise, I breathe in on a count to 4, I hold for 2, I breathe out 6, and then I hold for 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. I usually recommend people try different combinations of numbers. So people do a 5, 1, 7, 1. I had somebody once that did a 3, 1, 8, 1. And if that works for you, that's great. There's not really a wrong way to do it as long as it makes a trapezoid shape. And we want to extend it, but not to the point where your body thinks it can't breathe, because then it's going to panic that it doesn't have
That
oxygen.
causes anxiety.
Right.
And I've even said to clients, if I'm having you do this breathing and it's getting in your head too much, then I just want you to do kind of an exaggerated deep breath. So if that's the place you're at and that's all you can do, then do that. So if the numbers feel like, I don't have any idea what Kimberleigh just said, I don't remember the numbers, this is too much, or I feel like I'm holding my breath, then just do some exaggerated breathing and see if you can calm yourself down. Start there. See if that helps, right?
Right. As long as we can extend that exhale, you do it however you need to do it. We just really want to extend that breath out. So that way it's going to, and it's not just one breath that's going to do it. I wish it was one breath and we hit that red easy button and it was all good to go from there. We're going to need to take a few of them, but the more we're doing those, the more it's sending the signals back to the brain that says, okay, we're clear. The bear is not here anymore. We're fine. And then it can get the blood back to the stomach and it can get that digestion going. And the anxiety itself is going to also have its volume turned down. Maybe not off, but the volume turned down at least.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. All right.
Cool.
Great. I think these are really practical tips. We've got tons of clients that both have gut issues, and I think this is a great start.
For sure. For sure. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.